Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Trent Dressel from CourseCareers. Today, I am speaking with Parker to talk about his journey breaking into tech sales. If you are interested in breaking into tech sales, you stumbled across the right interview video here today. Parker, let's get straight to it. What was the biggest challenge you experienced once you decided, I want a job in tech sales? What was the biggest challenge to you to making that happen?
I think honestly the biggest challenge was just even getting an interview. I got so many of those auto rejection emails where, you know, basically they filled the position with somebody that had experience or there was something missing from my resume that they needed or something along those lines. So I think the most challenging thing for me was honestly just even getting a chance to talk to somebody.
Yeah, I know that a lot of folks talk about once they decide they want it, they see someone else who has done it, they believe they can do it themselves. So it sounds like you got to that point where you decided this was the right path for you. Now you needed to overcome the obstacle of actually getting in front of the right people that can then influence your career decisions. Why tech sales? What were you doing before? And what was that moment where you said, hey, maybe I want to get on this path over here?
Yeah, honestly, I was working as a Ford mechanic at a dealership in town, and I mean, I guess for starting young, I was making decent money. Maybe $50,000 a year, but it was a hard job, right? Over 100 degrees in the shop during the summers, long hours. Not a ton of free time during the week, and I don't know. I didn't go to college, so I had all these friends who went to college. They graduated, and then they went off to start, SDR roles, and they got to work in an office. There was a ping pong table. There was free drinks. They seemed to really
Yeah.
like their job. There was tons of career advancement. They were making, way more money than I was. And both my parents were both in tech sales. My mom worked at Xerox. My dad worked at Microsoft. So they had constantly been telling me since I was a kid that that's what I should do. But of course, being a kid, I wanted to do the opposite of what my parents told me to do. So I'm like, I'm gonna go be a mechanic. I love cars and love working on cars. So I'll go pursue that dream. But honestly, just looking at the career advancement in like the automotive industry, and honestly looking at some of the guys who had been in it 40, 50 years that were still wrenching on cars, like their bodies were beat up. They were just telling me every day, like, if you have a chance, go do something else, right? So yeah, I just wanted to get out.
Did you guys have a ping pong table in the body shop there?
No, we didn't. We had nothing. We had a tiny little break room, but it was the same room that people would come in to like order the parts. So like once I quoted a job, you'd figure out what parts you needed. You'd go in and see Roman at the parts desk. So like you're sitting at this tiny table eating your like microwavable like lean cuisine, or your Hungry Man, or whatever you bought off the Roach Coach that day, while like other people like ordering your parts. Yeah, so it was definitely not a fun environment for sure. I think the best thing we got was like they gave us all turkeys on Thanksgiving. That was it.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. You can't get that at the gas station on the way to work there. So,
True.
Parker,
True.
I'm sure a lot of folks resonate with your story and your background here. Didn't no degree,
Yep.
a family.
Yep.
You got in maybe a trade-based role where you could immediately start making impact, immediately start making pretty good money. But then there was this moment, it sounds like, where you realized maybe this isn't the future I want. I see folks 10, 20 years ahead of me that just physically it's demanding being in this job. So you realized this wasn't the career path for you. How did you start making a change? What was the moment where you're like, I'm going to start taking action to get over here?
Yeah, I really just started talking to my dad about, other opportunities and started talking to my friends about other opportunities. And I had tried, there really wasn't anything out there like Course Careers or, some of these like SDR boot camps you could go through. And I knew I definitely didn't want to go back to school. And so one of my friends that I graduated high school with was working at this company that did skip tracing. So basically, what we do is we bought bad debt, and then you had skip tracers that would try and collect that debt. So it was repossessing cars, basically. And so I managed a bunch of accounts for like Chrysler Capital and Santander, and my job was to basically figure out where these cars were and be able to dispatch the tow trucks there. And since I couldn't get an SDR job because I had no SDR experience and I also didn't have a degree, I decided let's go get some relatable experience. So I did a year at Primeritas, making hundreds of cold calls every single day, just trying to get people to let us come pick up their vehicle. It was a commission only job, and it was really really hard. But the biggest thing that I noticed was a lot of the people that weren't doing well there never picked up the phone. They tried to do everything behind the scenes, looking up people's addresses, all that kind of stuff. I figured out the fastest way to making money there and overachieving quota was picking up the phone and making cold calls and just having conversations with people, learning how to overcome the objections. And I feel like that's what really got me, finally some relatable experience to what the SDR role was. And that really helped me out. Honestly, I mean, if it wasn't for that, maybe I still could have found something, but there really wasn't a lot of options. The SDR role was still pretty new then as well.
Talk about CourseCareers. To your point, how did CourseCareers prepare you to then change careers?
Yeah, I think it's just awesome that there's basically an online school for you to go and almost like get your degree in the SDR field. I'm a super big fan. Most of my team were never SDRs before they were on my team before, and that's honestly my favorite hiring model because they're people that are coachable. They want to work hard, and they've got a ton of grit, but yet maybe they just don't have the experience of how to do the job. I can teach someone how to do the job, but what I can't teach is I can't teach somebody to be coachable. I can't teach somebody to work hard. I can't teach somebody to have a lot of grit and want to succeed, right? Like you either have that or you don't, and that's kind of why I love some of these people who want to get into tech but don't have the experience but are willing to work their absolute tails off. Those are usually the best reps I've ever had on my team.
So it sounds like in a leadership role, you're looking for folks that have that grit, have that hustle, that determination, I don't need to be told to go do this work. For someone out there that's questioning their abilities, what advice would you have for them to either turn that notch up to say, you know what, I'm going to be more committed to my current role, or, hey, I don't like what I'm doing today. I need to start taking actual action by reaching out to recruiters, by applying to companies, by seeking out information that can then help me get in this more desirable career path.
Yeah, I think if you're in a role today and you're questioning your abilities, I would say, figure out how much longer you can keep doing this job with like 100% mindset or 110% mindset. I talk to my team about this all the time, right? I'm like, realistically, how much time do you feel you have left in this role where you can give it your 100% all? Is it 3 months, 6 months, a year, right? Because I want to be realistic with, where we're at from a headspace perspective. And then, okay, if I say I've got 6 months left in this role, okay, well, we've got 6 months left to really get out there and kick some ass and make a name for ourselves, right? We can't really just sit around for the next 6 months, not get noticed, not be smashing our quotas, not be building our brand within the company and outside of the company, right? We got to be putting in that work. And then, hopefully after that 6 months, it pays off. Now, if you're in a role today and you're not sure if you really like that role, some things that I like to ask myself is, am I growing, right? Is there opportunity for me here? Do I like the people that I work with? Do I feel like I have a voice and can affect change? And could, if those things are missing, do I feel like I could get those somewhere else, right? Is there other opportunities out there? And if, I'm saying no to a lot of those questions, right? I'm not growing professionally and personally. I don't feel like I have the support system to be successful. I don't feel like I have a voice to the top or a voice that can, make change. Maybe I'll start looking somewhere else and find something else out there. But at the end of the day, if you are saying yes to some of those things, the grass might not always be greener on the other side. I have made jumps before that I 1000% regretted because I thought I was unhappy in my role, and decided to jump ship and go somewhere else and realized that I should have just stayed where I was at.
What does your day in the life today look like, Parker? Can you talk about your title and how you spend your time?
Yeah, so today I'm the Director of Sales Development at the company I work for, Trade.io. And really I oversee all things SDR related, but honestly, oversee pretty much everything. I'm the liaison between marketing and sales. I work with marketing. I help them with all of their campaigns, all of the copy, sourcing the data, what lists and personas we're going to be going after. I report to our C-suite now, so I'm helping them build out reports and figure out, where we should continue to move strategy and move the company forward. And probably one of my favorite things that I get to do every day is I try to figure out how to make my reps' lives easier every single day, right? Remove manual work that they have to do, try to filter out more, calls that they shouldn't be taking with unqualified prospects. And then honestly, just giving them learning opportunities and coaching. It's been harder to do that now because I feel like I'm getting pulled up higher into the business and I'm not so much on the ground floor as I would like to. And so what I'm trying to do with that is I'm really trying to bring in other people from inside or outside of the company to come and talk to my team a couple days a week to do some sort of training, whether it's discovery training, product training, training on our personas, training on how to use our tool, training on how to better social sell, how to write emails, how to get better at cold calling, kind of like all of the above. And so I think that's been the biggest challenge is like finally learning how to delegate a little bit more now that my position is kind of evolving more from just like managing the day-to-day functions of an SDR team, but really just trying to drive like all top of funnel strategy for the company.
With your current role today beginning to get that executive alignment internally with your own leadership team, put yourself in the shoes of, let's just say, a frontline SDR, BDR, newer to their sales career. They're focused on generating pipeline, trying to hit their quota, learning, advancing in the organization. How important is it to be cross-functional and to be known outside of just your direct team in your career?
Oh, especially now that we're remote, it's even more important, right? Because before you were in office, people could hear you on the phones, right? There was more talk. People knew how you were doing as an SDR. They talked to you in the lunchroom or, when you were getting a drink or at the, getting coffee. That doesn't really exist now anymore, right? Like sometimes you see other people in the company on calls, or you might do one of those donut calls with them or something like that. But you really got to put in time to really make a name for yourself now. And what I'm seeing on, my SDR team and other SDR teams out there is, you just got to put in the work to be able to make that happen. You got to be okay with just putting time on people's calendars and talking to them and getting to know them. You have to have, somebody like me who's really good at shouting you out and making the work that you're doing known to the rest of the company. I think another really good thing you could be doing as well is sending weekly updates. So I send a weekly update to my boss every single week with everything that I'm working on, goals that I'm accomplishing, goals that I have for next week, how the team is doing, how we're pacing, some top logos we book, things like that. You could be doing that as an SDR as well, right? Talk about the top logos that you sourced this week, how you sourced them. Talk about, what your plan of attack is for next week, what went well this week, what didn't go well, where you need help, challenges you're running into. Send that to your account executive, send that to their manager, send that to the VP of sales, right? And send it every single week, because no one else is doing this kind of stuff. It's really the same with how do you get an interview in tech? Well, you figure out how to stand out. Same with how do you book a meeting right now, right? Where outbound's challenging. You figure out how to stand out. You do things that are differently than everyone else. And I think the people that are taking those extra steps and putting in that extra time are really going to rise to the top, where other people are going to struggle because people don't know them. It's not that they're not accomplishing the same things. It's just that I think sometimes, unfortunately, once you get to the executive level, all you really see is numbers. You don't really know everyone that's on the team anymore, even when you're at a smaller company. So I think making your presence known, trying to take on more responsibility. I have reps on my team who want to take on more responsibility. I give them projects. I get them to partner with cross-functional leaders, right, to really show what they're capable of. But again, I think it just takes a place that's going to give you the opportunity to do that.
It sounds like you can still be an impact player without scoring all the points, quote unquote. Even if you aren't top of the leaderboard, you still can take actions behind the scenes to demonstrate your leadership, your capacity to want to take on more, and try and get leaders like yourself your attention so that you can get shouted out, but also take that in your own hands by sharing, hey, this is what I've accomplished this week. this, hey, I'm available to help anyone else that may need help. And I think that that's such a great call out, because you don't necessarily need to be the top performer so long as people believe you're contributing, and people will want to work with you, and eventually you may get the looks from leadership.
Right.
Speaking of interviewing, this to me feels like an ambiguous topic that a lot of folks ask about that they don't quite understand. Can you talk about your experience being on the other chair of being the interviewer, looking to interview top talent, whether it be questions you ask for? I know you talked about some traits you're looking for earlier, hard work, dedication, et cetera, but can you just talk about general best practices and what it would take to impress someone like yourself?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that people have a misconception of is most of the people who show up to an email, or to, sorry, not an email, most people that show up to an interview, they have not done any work to prep themselves for that interview at all, right? If I'm going to interview you, I'm going to go out, I'm going to look at your resume, I'm going to look at your past experience, I'm going to learn a little bit about you. So that way I can ask you some specific questions about you, not just some like standard blanket interview questions. I kind of expect you to do the same with me, right? Have an idea of who I am, what role I'm in, the company I work for, how the company makes money, who we sell to, right? Maybe pull out some nuggets about me. I'm very public on LinkedIn. You could pull all sorts of personalization out. But there's not a lot of people that are doing that. They're kind of just showing up and doing the bare minimum, right? And for me, I don't really care like what you're wearing or anything like that. That doesn't bother me. You could take the interview in your car. It's all about the energy that you bring and the pre-work that you did during the interview that really shows me like, okay, this is probably how this person's going to do in the role itself, right? Because you're interviewing for free. We're not paying you. This isn't a job, right? But you're putting in a lot of effort and you're going above and beyond. That starts to tell me like that's how this person's going to work in the job as well.
And if you think about it, if anything, it demonstrates your seriousness as an employer looking to hire talent, because the opportunity cost of you spending your time and the company investing resources to actually actively hire folks is really important. Let's say your company has an open position, let's say a sales development rep. I always like to think of it as the front door and the back door. Someone can go apply on your LinkedIn page, someone can go apply on the company website, and then potentially filter through, get the interview. The back door to me is networking, reaching out to someone like yourself, connecting with you, commenting on your post, liking your post, maybe shooting you a message at some point, like what you're doing, don't make an ask, but then come back to you and then say, can you give me an interview, can you guide me, et cetera, et cetera. How could someone position themselves that may not have all the credentials on paper? How would they go about networking with someone like yourself, or just generally at a company to impress them, to potentially network their way into a company? Of course, they'll have to do an interview, but how could someone go about that if you were in that position?
Yeah, so it'd probably be helpful to share like kind of my journey at Gong. So I actually applied at Gong, right, just through LinkedIn, sent my resume through like I typically would. I got auto rejected, and I got to say I was disappointed, but was also pretty pissed because I felt like I was very qualified for the role. So anyways, I didn't really let that stop me. For some reason, I just had like a fire under my butt that I really wanted to work there. And so I figured out that my mentor was also a mentor of somebody else who was in the director of sales development's wedding at Gong. So we were able to work some like referrals to next thing I know, I didn't even resubmit another interview or talk to a recruiter. I was directly talking to the person that was making the overall hiring decision. And honestly, that's pretty much how I've gotten every single one of my jobs since. At Trey today, right? I let my friend Gabriella Blackwell know, hey, I'm on the hunt for my next SDR role. And she was like, oh my gosh, I know who you should go work for. There's this guy, Ralph Barcy. He's awesome. He's looking for somebody. Next thing I know, the guy is adding me on LinkedIn and shot me a message like, hey, I want to talk to you. We have a role open here. Like, let's get the interview process started. Again, didn't talk to a recruiter at all. I'm talking directly to the guy making the decision. I had a call with him, had a couple other calls with people internally, and a couple weeks later, I'm signing an offer letter with them. But again, it would have never happened unless you started kind of leveraging those referrals. I think that is invaluable.
It sounds like you used that initial adversity of getting auto rejected from Gong as motivation to push even harder. Some folks could take that and maybe just accept, hey, this isn't for me, and take an easier route. Do you have any advice for how someone can follow in your footsteps and really use that adversity as an opportunity to not only learn but also motivation so that they can continue pushing forward to eventually get that look as you did?
Right. I think if you do get an auto, reply back and it doesn't look like somebody wrote this to you personally, it's honestly probably their applicant tracking system or whatever greenhouse or whatever they're using probably scanned your resume. It was missing something that they're looking for from like the pillars they want to hire from. And so honestly, I wouldn't let that discourage you at all. So I worked with a woman at Gong who she applied, got the auto rejection, and then could have easily just said, hey, you know what? Screw it. I'm done. Like, I tried. I got rejected. She created like a personalized video sequence and sent it to every single one of the SDR managers, right? So now we're looking in our, because I didn't even know this person had applied. Now we're looking in our applicant tracking system, and I'm like, hold on a second. This person got auto rejected. Why? Let's get them in the interview process. We got them in the interview process, flew through the interview process, went from inbound SDR to, I think, enterprise outbound SDR, then to junior account executive, then to senior account executive, right? Could have missed out on all of that had they just not taken that extra step to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try one more thing. And there's lots of different things you can do. You can add some of the SDRs that are currently in that role on LinkedIn. Offer to buy them coffee to pick their brain as to what it's like being an SDR at that company, right? They're going to tell their boss, they're going to tell the hiring manager, they're going to tell the recruiter that you're doing this, right? Again, like these are the things that move you to the top of the pile. There's tons of free data tools out there. There's Seamless, Rocket Reach, just to name a few. Pick up the phone and call them. They are SDR leaders. Their reps are making cold calls every day. They're not going to mind a candidate picking up the phone and giving them a cold call. And again, if I had to think back of all of the people I've interviewed, all of the people that I've hired, all of the people that have applied, I've probably been cold called by candidates maybe 4 times ever. Again, like these are things that people aren't doing, right? But it's part of the job. You've got to start doing the job to be able to get the job at the end of the day.
So many gems right there, Parker. That's so good. You're inviting yourself to now receive some cold calls here. So anyone
Yes.
out there, make sure to bring your A game if you're gonna shoot Parker a cold call there.
I don't even
Parker,
expect you to have the best cold call ever. It's the fact that you got my number and picked up the phone and called me. Like, I can teach you how to do a better cold call. I can't teach someone to like have the grit to pick up the phone and call. That's the only thing I can't do. I can't put in the activity for you. If you're willing to put in the activity, we can make you great.
yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Something you said earlier that really stuck with me is you can apply to a company, you can speak with, let's say, a front level recruiter, and you'll ask the recruiter, hey, what are next steps? And they'll say, we'll get back to you, we'll take a look. You mentioned how important it is to really network and be known by the influencers, the folks that may be the leader of sales development, the VP of sales, that the recruiter then reports to another recruiter, and that reporter then works directly with them. So most people don't really think that it's not even the recruiter who's really going to make the decision. It's either a committee or someone in this executive position or leadership position. How can someone go about trying to get exposure there? I know you shared some strategies, sending voice messages, but one, how important is it to have exposure from those folks that you may not even know will actually make the decision? But two, what are some additional strategies that you might be able to offer?
I think additional strategies is one, I would try to close every single interview that I have. Again, not something not a lot of people do, right? Like, hey, Trent, appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Before we get off this call, do you have any hesitations or reservations about moving me forward in the process? Because if so, I'd love to take a couple minutes and talk through them. Most of the time, they're probably going to be like, no hesitations on my end. Like, we'll get back to you. But there is times where people will give you feedback, right? And it might not be deal breaker feedback, but I think that is a time as well where, like, because I'm interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing me. And honestly, I did this and someone gave me some like really just terrible nitpicky feedback. And it really bothered me because I'm like, okay, wow, I don't really think that that matters at all. It seems really small, but they really made a big deal about it. It almost made me kind of feel terrible about myself for making like a tiny little mistake. Um, and it really told me like what it would be like working for that person. And I honestly just withdrew from the interview process. So it kind of works both ways, right? Like I don't want to be super picky and go work for somebody that, it's not going to be a good fit. And so I think sometimes that answer can one help you close the role, but also two can kind of give you a sense for like, is this person really going to give you feedback? And then also what type of feedback are they going to give you as well?
Well, that's fantastic advice, Parker. I'd say the last 8 minutes are gold, absolute gold for anyone that is actively in their job search. So make sure anyone who's still listening, go back, take notes, and also hit Parker up on LinkedIn. Parker, is that your preferred method for folks to reach you? LinkedIn, anything else you want to plug, whether it be
Yeah.
open positions or just where else they can find you?
We've got no open positions right now, which I'm bummed about. This has got to be the best market for hiring SDRs right now. There's a ton of people out there. We're not hiring as of today, but as soon as I'm hiring, I will make sure that everyone at Course Careers knows. But if you want to
Oh,
join
right on.
I've got a weekly group session that I do every week. It's at 3:30 to 4 Central Time on Tuesdays. And then also I offer one-on-one coaching as well. So if you're looking to get some interview help, you're looking to help apply for jobs, whatever you need, you're in the SDR world today and you feel like you need some more coaching, I'm happy to give that to you. I've got my Calendly link up on my LinkedIn profile there.
Fantastic. Well, folks who are looking to meet Parker potentially, go check out the LinkedIn, go click on the link, go visit the session, then you can go get direct access right there. Well, Parker, thanks so much for being here today. And everyone have a great rest of the day and let's go make some money.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks so much, Trent.